Daf Yomi Tractate Bava Metzia, page 87b, part 2, with the words Mikol Makom Kasha. The Gemara resumes its discussion. In any case, it is difficult, as there still has not been found a source according to which the halakha that a laborer may eat when he is working applies to all types of produce. Rather, Shmuel said, the verse states with regard to a laborer who may eat produce, but you shall not move a sickle. Deuteronomy 23:26. This serves to include all types of produce that are cut with a sickle. The Gemara asks, but this word sickle, the chermesh mevoile, b'shas chermesh echol, shelo b'shas chermesh lo techal. The Gemara asks, but this word sickle is necessary to teach a different halakha with regard to labor. At the time of the sickle, in other words, when the work has been completed and the produce is being picked, you may eat. But when it is not yet the time of the sickle, you may not eat. If so, how can Shmuel use the term sickle as a source for the halakha that a laborer may eat all kinds of produce that are cut with a sickle? The Gemara answers that halakha with regard to when a laborer may eat is derived from the verse, but you may not put any in your vessel. Deuteronomy 23:25. As the Gemara will explain later, therefore the word sickle is not required to teach that halakha and can be used as the source of the halakha that a laborer may eat all kinds of produce that are cut with a sickle, as stated by Shmuel. The Gemara asks, Shmuel's derivation works out well for any type of produce that requires a sickle for its harvest. But from where do we derive that the same applies to a type of produce that does not require a sickle for its harvest? Rather, Rabbi Yitzchak said that the halakha concerning which produce a laborer may eat is derived from a different source. The verse states standing, kama, Deuteronomy 23:26. And the unmodified term kama serves to include any standing produce. The Gemara asks, but didn't you say earlier that the term standing is referring specifically to standing produce whose owner is obligated in the mitzvah of challah, not to other produce? The Gemara answers, that matter applies before we derived a halakha from the mention of sickle. Now that a halakha was derived from sickle, any type of produce that requires a sickle for its harvesting is included, as stated earlier, and this applies even though the owner of that particular produce is not obligated in the mitzvah of challah. Accordingly, why do I need the term standing? It serves to include any standing produce. The Gemara asks, and now that we have derived the halakha concerning which produce a laborer is entitled to eat, from both the mention of sickle and from the word standing, why do I need the earlier verse, when you come into your neighbor's vineyard? Then you may eat grapes until you have enough at your own pleasure, but you may not put any in your vessel. Deuteronomy 23:25. The Gemara answers that Rava said, this verse is required for its unique halachot. As it is taught in the Braita, the phrase, when you come, tavo, is interpreted as follows. Coming is stated here, and coming is also stated there. In the same day you shall give him his wages, and the sun shall not go down upon it. Deuteronomy 24:15. Just as there in Deuteronomy chapter 24, the verse is speaking of a laborer, so too here in Deuteronomy chapter 23, the verse is speaking of a laborer, despite the fact that this detail is not stated explicitly in the verse. The Braita continues analyzing the verse. The phrase, in your neighbor's vineyard, indicates that it is prohibited for a laborer to put the grapes in his vessel only while he's working in the vineyard of a Jew, but not in the vineyard of a Gentile, where he may place grapes in his vessel. The Gemara digresses to discuss this point. This explanation works out well, according to the one who says that robbery from a Gentile is prohibited. I'm just reading it. Not necessarily endorsing it. Then why was it necessary for the verse to permit a laborer to eat the Gentile's grapes? But according to the one who says that robbery from a Gentile is permitted, now that robbery itself is permitted, is it necessary to teach the laborer in the vineyard of a Gentile is permitted to put grapes in his vessel? The Gemara answers, the one who maintains that robbery from a Gentile is permitted interprets the phrase in your neighbor's vineyard as teaching that a laborer may eat produce only in his neighbor's vineyard, but he may not eat produce of consecrated property. The Bava continues, the term then you may eat indicates that a laborer must eat the entire grape and may not suck its juice and cast away the rest. The word grapes teaches that a laborer may eat only grapes by themselves and not grapes and something else. In other words, he may not use a condiment to make the grapes more palatable to enable him to eat an excessive amount. Okay, the term at your own pleasure, kenafshecha, Deuteronomy 23:25, can also mean as you are. Consequently, the term kenafshecha teaches that just as the halacha is concerning the owner of the vineyard himself, so is the halacha concerning you, the laborer himself, just as the owner alluded to by the term nafshecha may eat from the produce before its labor is complete, and is exempt from separating tithes, so too the laborer himself may eat and is exempt from tithes. The expression until you have enough indicates that a laborer may eat until he is satiated, but he may not engage in excessive eating. The phrase, but you may not put any in your vessel, teaches that at a time when you put the grapes in the owner's vessels, in other words, when harvesting the grapes, then you may eat. But at a time when you are not putting the grapes in the owner's vessels, in other words, if the laborer is performing other tasks in the vineyard before harvesting, you may not eat. Amar Rav Yanai, Rav Yanai says the owner of untithed produce is not obligated in the mitzvah of tithing.